All right, welcome back to the Partnership Mastermind Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Lavoie. Today's guest is someone I've been itching to get on the show for quite some time. We have Christie Hickman, who's leading partnerships at ClearCompany. And what I love about Christie is she's actually doing the thing that most teams talk about but rarely pull off, which is driving real revenue through partnerships in a strategic way. She's not about logos or having hundreds of partners, not marketplace theater. She's all about pipeline, deals, and outcomes, which is what we love on this show. She also happens to be one of the top operators in our entire community. She won Ecosystem Leader of the Year in 2025. She was a top performer in her personal cohort, and she's even had members of her team come through our programs as well, who also went on to win awards. We're absolutely thrilled to have you on the show. We're going to break down how she's done it. Christie, welcome to the show.
Awesome. Thank you, Chris. Really excited to be here. Honestly, it's an honor.
Amazing. Cool. Look, we have a jam-packed session for you, but we start every episode with what we call the Fast Five segment. Consider this the appetizer segment. We're asking questions to get you warmed up, but also give the audience an opportunity to get to know you a little bit better. You ready for that?
Sounds great. I'm ready.
Alrighty. Let's do it. Okay, cool. First things first. Some of these are practical questions. So let's just imagine you're on a first new partner disco call. So this prospective partner has been hitting you up on LinkedIn saying, hey, Christie, I think we could partner. And finally you give in. You're like, okay, I'll talk to this person. Right? So they chase you down. And then within 5 minutes, you know that this just is not going anywhere. Total waste of time. What are some of the things that maybe they have said or done on these calls where you're like, I knew this was a dud pretty early on? Because I know you've definitely been on some of these situations.
Yes, really good question. I would say first and foremost, obviously I do my own research about the company before we get on the call. But obviously, there's only so much research, and sometimes actually ChatGPT isn't 100% correct. So I would say when I first get on the call, just really making sure that we're overlapping correctly. And what I mean by that is the customers that we're hoping to get and the prospects that we're trying to get, is that overlapping with the clients that they already have or prospects that they're trying to get as well. So like ICP, understanding where they're sitting with regards to an employee count, what are the industries that they're really searching for, already have in their client base. That's huge, because if that is off, even if it is a little bit, that's a huge, area of concern. I would also say just understanding like their marketplace. Do they have a ton of partners? Is it packed already? Do they have potential competitors that we kind of go head to head with? And what does that look like? Kind of that share of voice. If it is super packed, I still think that there's like potential area, but it's just something to like keep in mind. And then maybe the third thing, and probably, maybe not like the most important, but it is really important, is understanding what is the pain of their products, right? Do they sell the same thing that we do? Is there area where we can actually come in and be able to help their clients and prospects in a very tangible way? If there's too much overlap, or we feel like we're just going to be getting into super finite, feature functionalities, that may not be the best fit. So.
Yeah, thanks for that. And I totally agree. I think I like the pain point kind of piece there. For me, it's like, look, I want my partners, their product team, their customer success, their sales team, I want them to look at us as like almost like a lifeboat. It's like, thank God, right? ClearCompany exists, right? Because they fill this massive void that our native product functionality can't serve.
Correct.
And I think that's, if you really index your time on finding partners like that, which isn't easy, right? Like there's only a handful of those partners, but if you do, it gives you so much more leverage versus, working with a bunch of partners where you're kind of important to like some of their customer base. It's just so much harder, and you end up spending so much more resources. So does that kind of align with your take there?
Absolutely. I think it really comes down to the value, right? Like what are we bringing to them, as in like the rep and the leader, and what are we bringing to their clients and potential prospects? That is honestly like monumental in order to make sure that you're building a relationship, because everything that you're doing as far as enablement or mapping, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a little bit, is all around like what are you actually bringing to them, and how are you helping either retain a client or being able to win a new deal together.
Absolutely. And you're right. We're going to get into enablement and some of your hot takes there. We're also going to talk about rep alignment. The next question, second one here on the quick hitting, is around a hypothetical situation of you starting in a new role. Let's just say you get hired as, like, say, a head of partnerships, because we get this question all the time. Hey, Chris, I just started on the first partnership hire. We have no partners. What do I even do? Right? So I'm curious, you join a new company, hypothetically, 0 partners. What are you even thinking about doing in month 1? right? Because this is something that we all know, those first 30 to 60 days, especially in a high profile position like that's critical. You got to make a mark. So where does your brain go of like first month, no partners, big bet on bringing someone like you in? What are you even thinking about in that first month?
Yeah. Honestly, I would think about, the revenue that we currently have and what partners, like what platforms are they already on? So then naturally you can see, all right, in this case, we'll just say like a specific partner has, maybe there are 3 of them in the tech stack. They're using different partners. I think that naturally enables you to say, okay, there's some sort of fluidity here and connection, and then being able to say, okay, how many of these companies are tied to X revenue? And then that way, if there isn't a formal partnership created there, you can already go to them and say, hey, we have $500,000 of joint customers that we have right now. Could be worth building this out and being able to grow that and scale that. And then from there, you can take that and be like, all right, I'm going to make these maybe my top tier partners, and then be able to say, what are other partners that maybe look like those partners, or take the product side again and be like, okay, where's a potential gap in what we don't have currently, or a gap in their product strategy that we can fill, which kind of goes to the first question as well. But I'd start with like data and understanding like what is current, and then can we build upon that? Because there has to be like a couple partners that are, connecting with current deals or one revenue that we already have.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's one of your superpowers, is leading into data. And just for the audience there, what's so great about that is it's a really an inward look, an inward approach of understanding where those high leverage potential partners could be, kind of working backwards from your customers, mapping your customers, like what are the top tools used in our current top customers' tech stacks? Well, that's probably a good signal. What type of service and implementation partners are our customers already using that we don't partner with, as opposed to an outward facing view, which is what a lot of lazy folks will do. And it's like, okay, what's our company ICP? Okay, let me go find other companies who have the similar ICP. Let's just try to force a shoe that may or may not fit, right? So I really appreciate that inward customer-centric model there. Okay, cool. So that actually brings me to a next question and the quick hitting 5. What's one hard truth about partner leadership that ICs usually learn later than we would maybe like, or it's just a lagging skill or truth that, is really tough for them to develop?
Honestly, I would say tracking everything, value, tangible value and metrics. I think sometimes when you originally get into a role or you're in an IC position, you think activity is going to be the main driver, right? I'm on all these calls, I'm doing all of these presentations. While that's great and that's wonderful, if that's not translating into, rep pipeline and closed won revenue down the line, I think that that's where people kind of could be tripped up a little bit. And I also think not even just quarter metrics of like, who are you getting your leads from? Like what reps, what teams, what leaders, so you can actually snowball that further. But then also zooming out and saying, okay, what did I do Q1 versus Q2? Is there a growth there? And then even zooming out further, if you're in a role as an IC or even like a leader as you continue moving forward, what is the tangible growth in revenue quarter over quarter, in pipeline quarter over quarter? And can you find actual trends with that? And then you can actually tier your partners accordingly as well.
Yeah, super strong stuff there. I totally agree. I mean, look, I think early days for me, I was always kind of outcome driven. I had a really heavy quota hung on my head from like day one. So I kind of was born in the fire. But that being said, I think a lot of ICs do trick themselves into thinking that activity equals like impact, right? And that's only one piece of the funnel, right? I think everyone should think of their role as a funnel. Activity is important, but it's top of funnel, right? It's a leading indicator of what might happen later. And that should convert, to Christie's point, into like deals and pipeline, and then bottom of funnel and close one. So I think improving your like understanding of how does activities actually translate into bona fide outcomes, and how can you tweak the inputs there to improve the outputs? Is that a good way to read that back, Christie?
Absolutely. And I also think just tracking like what is actually working, right? It could be different modalities. Like we just talked about this the other day is, some individuals are interested in like Zoom meetings. Some of them just want to be called. Some of them want to be texted because they're on meetings all day long and they just want quick updates, or they want to be able to connect in that, more of a personal way. So I think not even just doing the activities, which as you said, Chris, is important, but like understanding what activities are actually driving results and then being able to kind of pivot from there. And obviously it's not a one size fits all, even thinking like this partner works in this way. It even goes down to like how do the leaders operate, what's important to them, and then like how do the reps operate, and one rep could be very different than another.
Yeah, I love that, and I'm gonna add a side question. I'll get a reaction from you. What you just said speaks to a really important blocker that prevents like high performing ICs from getting into like senior IC land or even people management land, which is understanding how they are actually getting the results. And let me explain that. Predictability, as you know now in the leadership circles, is everything, right? Like CROs are paid to generate predictable outcomes, right? Predictable is the key word, which is to say that say you're an IC and maybe you hit 112% this quarter and then 96% that quarter. And your boss, like Christie, comes in and says, okay, how did you do it? Where did each of these deals come from? If you can't explain what you actually did and you kind of just like put your hands up like, oh, that one was kind of fluky. That one was like an organic random one, or that one, yeah, I did some work there. Like that, you're going to be held back. So to Christie's point, you need to be tracking things. And what that allows you to do is understand where is the leverage, where are the underperforming things that you're doing, and then you can invest obviously more time and resources on the higher leverage things to generate that predictability. Because that's what it really takes to get into those more senior circles is you need to have a plan that you can defend because you're asking for investment, but investment in what? You need an actual plan. Does that translate, Christie?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's, sometimes I feel like partnerships can be seen as just like, we're going to go out, we're going to talk to people, we're going to go to events and like see what happens, right? I think the idea of like seeing what happens can be a little bit dangerous. Like you want to be able to go in and be like, this is my hypothesis at least. Yeah. Like, I think that this is what we're trying to do. These are, the attendees as an example. We'll just take an event. These are the attendees. I've already mapped out who they are. I already understand what their tech stack is. And I already know like, hey, they could be a good fit for us, right? Yep. And then at the event, you're actually spending time talking to them as opposed to just showing up and being like, all right, well, let's see like who's here, And I think that's very similar to like your strategy in each quarter, your strategy with a partnership. Like who are the individuals or the teams that map to who you want to be talking to from a prospect perspective? And then being able to say, okay, my hypothesis, did that equal the outcome that I'm hoping for? And if it doesn't, that's okay. But if you're not tracking it, you can't pivot. So
100%. You need to be surgically directional about how you go about it. And everything is a bet. You're going to lose some bets, but you have to make the most of some of those. So I like that approach. Okay, cool. Fourth question for you here. This is a fun one. If your work style had a warning label on it, so this is a spicy one, what would it say? And while you think about it, for example, mine would be, and anyone I've managed will tell you this, like be accountable or be gone, right? Yeah. So it's like, working with Chris Lavoie, warning, right? Be accountable or be gone. Because for me, it's like, look, accountability is everything. If I can trust that when the chips are on the table and your back's against the wall, that you're going to like show up, do your best, but be honest about what's happening. I can work with anyone who is like that. But if you don't bring that, there's just no place for you, right? And obviously I have to bring that as well. So what's your equivalent answer?
I would say my equivalent answer would be focus on tangible outcomes or you don't scale. Like, I know that it's kind of a broken record of like focusing on like what you're actually doing, but truly, I think in partnerships, it's like, where did it come from? How is it growing? Like, are you getting one deal that's snowballing into 3 deals? Like, what are we actually doing? So yeah, I think being focused and passionate about like what you're doing is really important. So.
We love that. And we love how many times you've said the word deal 10 minutes into this episode. That just shows you how much of a revenue leader is. The CRO of ClearCompany right now is going to be smiling listening to this episode. Okay, cool. We'll finish up the Fast 5 with this one. And this is a fun one. So I look back. So in our boot camps, we always do fun facts when members introduce themselves. So I went all the way back to the 25.4 batch for you, Christie. And your fun fact was that you love to travel. You've been in 19 countries. Not sure if that's still accurate. So I'm curious, what's one place that changed how you think about people or business? And then as a bonus, where's next on your travel bucket list?
That's a great question. I mean, obviously, I would have to say probably the moment that I decided to up and move to a foreign country. I went to France, and it was a very really cool experience because I was teaching English over there. And I was quite young. I didn't really know what I was doing. And it really just changed me forever because it made me kind of get out of my shell. I knew enough to be dangerous, but I obviously didn't have the full playbook ready to go. And I think it just, it puts you in a situation where you just kind of have to like figure it out and also be like really diligent about like what's working and what isn't working, you know? And even
Love
like
that.
language wise, you know, understanding, okay, where am I at? Where do I want to be? And then like each day being able to say like, all right, I hit this next milestone, or I feel really good about this. And you know, meeting friends in a separate country is really cool. I still have two of my really best friends that live there as well.
Amazing.
And you know, it's a beautiful experience. So just getting out of your shell and pushing yourself, I would say. So
I love that. You seem to do
and then
well at that. You go ahead.
yeah,
Sorry. Next on your bucket list.
and then next on the bucket list, I would say Japan. Honestly, like I've
Yeah, yeah.
heard so many good
Japan's
things.
hot right now.
I know it is. And I just think, I don't know, the more culturally different, in my opinion, the better. Because it's just this beautiful opportunity to, you know, arrive and check into the
Yeah.
hotel and then leave your bags and be like, all right, let's see what this looks like. And you don't know what the signs say, you have no idea what you're eating. Like, it's just like a really cool
Yep.
experience where you get to like try something new in a really cool way. So.
I love that. I love that. I totally agree. I love to go to places that look nothing like where I grew up and where I live currently. So I love that. I hope you get there soon.
Thank
All
you.
right, look, you're warmed up. We're all warmed up now. Now we're going to get into the fun stuff. The first segment is always origin story because we all have very different paths into partnerships. None of us went to school for it. So for you, you started in marketing, then sales, then in partnerships. So I'm curious, at what point in that kind of critical early biz dev phase, which I think you're 9 years in, was it like, oh, this is different? Like partnerships it could be a really strong lane for me. Like what did that moment or collection of moments look like for you?
I would say kind of the transition from marketing into sales dev and understanding the partner lens was really when I was put into this position where, you know, I had still a little bit of direct sales, but like I had one of our largest partners. And the largest partner, basically this role was like, let's see what happens, right? Like it wasn't a partnership that was like completely formed at that point. It was like, all right, let's see if we can build this out. And it was a really cool opportunity because I got more of my closed won business from that partner than any other direct sales that I had.
Wow.
And that led me to be like, all right, I really need to nurture this. And this role was interesting because it was direct sales and it was account management and customer success all at the same time. So it was a really interesting role because I was able to wear a lot of hats. And I was thinking to myself, like, A, the opportunities that I'm getting from this partner are more qualified. B, the opportunities that I'm getting and that I'm able to maintain, I was getting more upsells from that as well. And so for me, it was just kind of this shampoo effect of, okay, I can actually hit my number faster with the trust and the relationships that I built from this one partner versus like having to go out and like, you know, really work probably like 3 times as hard in order to maybe get like one small deal. So for me, it was just the power of that relationship and trust and just being able to build off of that really.
I love that. Any sales folks listening? Hopefully that was helpful for you. It's like, oh, imagine that, right? Leaning into your partner
Yes.
ecosystem, you can get healthier deals that move faster. That shocker. But I love that. And as I listened to you talk about kind of the account management, customer success side, it had me thinking, do you think that played some role in you developing this like really strong data savviness in that it's like a high touch account effectively where you have to like really understand all of the metrics, all the dynamics of that partnerships. So was that like almost like an incubator for you to like really understand all the important metrics of a really important partner account?
I mean, yes, honestly, because it was completely full cycle. Like I knew I would not be able to upsell to that account within the partner if I didn't have QBRs. Like I remember working hours and hours and hours, and this was before we had everything at our fingertips. You know, I was like exporting things from Salesforce and creating my own slides and doing all of this. And at the time, you know, each of these QBRs was with the VP that, you know, yes, they were a partner, but like they asked a lot of things. Like they wanted to understand all of these different trends and basically asking questions on like, why should I give you more money? And also, why should I introduce you to another potential account at this partner? And so I think it just led me to say, hey, I need to make sure that I have all of my things in lockstep so that like it's undeniable, like why you wouldn't want to do more with me. And their name is on it too if they introduce me to another leader that's in another part of this partnership. Like you want to make sure that like there's no reason not to do that. So and I think
Right.
metrics help a lot with that.
Yeah, no, it sounds like it was a really great kind of accelerator platform for you to like build a lot of really important skills from different angles that are clearly showing up at this stage in your career. The last question in the segment, which we always ask, is early like big mistakes, right? And you were vulnerable in our prep talking about one of your early mistakes was, I don't want to put it this way, but perhaps like not as partner centric as maybe you would have liked, so to speak, where you're like, look, you've got pressure, you got to hit your numbers. So it's easy to be looking inwards instead of outwards. So like, can you walk us through kind of what that experience was like, what the big learning was, and how you were able to kind of flip the script?
Yeah, I would just say early on, you feel like you're so excited to be like, this is what I want to show you, and this is what I want to sell to you, basically, and yes, you have your number, and yes, like that, I mean, sales is stressful. It's kind of goes hand in hand. But I think that early on, I was probably indexed a little bit too much on that side where I was just over talking or over trying to like explain things. And I think now the beauty is letting them tell you more about like what are their pain points, or if you're talking to a rep, like what's their quota, and like what if they were able to shave off 10%, 20% of their quota because they introduced us to a few of their clients, or like they allowed us to be a part of some of their deals. Like that could be the difference of them going to their own president's club. So I think being able to understand people and understand like what motivates them and what is important to them is like the most important piece. And then how do you fit into them? So that way it's not like you're asking for things, you're helping them, you're actually like supporting them in what matters most to them. So
I love that was fantastic, Christy. And I think as I was listening, it's like that's certainly applicable in how you kind of initiate and manage partnerships. But I think you could apply that to any cross-functional relationship internally, right? Like you mentioned, like talking too much, which is funny because I think you're quite concise. For me, I definitely talk too much. So I struggle a lot, candidly in the early days, not just in partner conversations, but when I was pitching to my boss's boss, I would come in and just like try to like sell them by like telling them every little piece of information. But then as you mature, you realize like, okay, these people are smart. They just need just enough information, but they need a clear ask. Okay, Christy, you're presenting us information, data. Then you're presenting us with a proposal. What are you literally asking? I'm asking for X amount of resources to invest in blank. The expected outcome is Y. We will know if we were successful by measuring Z, right? So that took me a long time to get to that point. Does that kind of resonate with you of your model of like, trying to like approach conversations that way, not just even with partners, but even internally now that you're dealing in the leadership circles? Does that approach kind of resonate?
Yes, absolutely. I would say in the very beginning of any sort of presentation that I had done, it was almost like a lead up to what I really wanted to talk about at the end.
Perfect word.
And, you're not going to watch a movie to where like the very end is what's important. You're going to lose your audience. And so I think that making sure that it's front and center and like the value to them, why are you asking for this, and like what is going to be the result is really important. And like still working on that, right? It is a skill that's really tough, and we work on it every day. But yeah, I think the details for us are like, I'm so excited to like tell all the details leading up to it, but really making sure like you're starting from the top, almost like you're taking the end and putting it in the front. And then you kind of give the sub bullets of like why it matters and what the outcome will be.
I think that approach works really well with like really important partner QBRs. As a quick side note, I think QBRs are done really poorly on the most part, and I definitely facilitate a lot of poor ones as well. So I think starting with the big takeaway, what are we asking for, and then let's get into the details, I think is a strong approach. But that last segment, you started talking about the people side of things, which brings us perfectly into the third segment, which is partnerships are built through people, which is a direct quote from our prep. And you said something that I love, which is partnerships are built through people, not programs. So the first question for you here, Christy, is, okay, what does that actually look like in practice, right? When you say understand the rep, what are you actually trying to figure out?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's different levels to this. I had mentioned not long ago, understanding, what is important to them. Even down to like, again, like what is their actual quota? What is it that they're hoping to get out of this partnership? What do they need? What do they want? On that business side is obviously one side of it, but then the flip side is who they actually are as a person. You're not going to be able to gain the trust, in my opinion, without actually getting to know them. Otherwise, you're just going to be another vendor that they're having a meeting with or responding to an email. I think that people buy and work from individuals who they trust and that they know, and I think that's really like the first part of it, and cutting through the noise of additional partnerships, that's really the key. So it could be anything from understanding that they're about to have a baby, understanding that they just, moved into a new house, understanding that they love F1 or whatever it might be, and I think being able to kind of tag those little things in there, or even being able to say like, hey, their birthday was like a couple weeks ago, like, how are you doing, like, how was it, what did you do, those elements, like really bringing like the personal aspect into it is important. And I also think that it shows, if you remember these little things and that you bring that back to them, they're going to be like, wow, they're super detailed, they actually care, and they're going to treat this prospect or this customer or this joint opportunity in the same way that they do with me, and all the finite details that they remember.
That was fantastic. And what I love about that is you're like, we have to support the partner company. So there's a company component of it. The company needs to win and benefit, but the people are driving the partnerships, right? So you need to make sure they win. And we had another guest on the show, Lauren Spence, former VP of Agency Partnerships at Commerce. She just joined Vercel. And she talked about like, the famous Maya Angelou quote of like, people will forget what you say, people will forget what you do, but they won't forget how you make them feel. And I've always brought that to how I've executed in partnerships, especially when I was like in an IC role. And you've said this a couple of times already in this interview, which is like, I always thought like, how can I help my key counterpart on the other side? How can I help them hit quota? How can I help them hit President's Club, get a big fat bonus check, get promoted, look awesome internally, right? So is that kind of in line with how you're approaching that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, like, the value that we bring doesn't always have to be beneficial for us, It could be something where we see like something going on Sixth Sense, and it's like, hey, like they're trending for something that doesn't have anything to do with us, but we let the rep know, or we let the leader know what's going on. And I think that shows that we're going above and beyond to help them, even in areas where we don't have any sort of agenda in it. So.
Yep. Okay, cool. So look, I am fully on board with you. I'm going to throw you a curveball. I'm going to play devil's advocate because we like to spice things up on the show. So again, I'm fully on Team Christie here. I agree. But let's just say I'm a crusty CRO and you're reporting to me. So I'm this CRO, old school, and I say, okay, Christie, that sounds fine, but my biggest concern is how the heck are you going to scale that, right? Everyone says they want to build relationships, but how are we actually going to do that at scale? What are you going to do differently to prevent that from breaking as the program grows, right? So let's just imagine I'm tough on you with that approach, because look, this really happens, right? Like the CROs especially, they will question these like seemingly unpredictable, hard to like measure elements, which are like relationship building. So how would you kind of respond to a CRO in that type of situation?
Yeah. I mean, I think it kind of goes back to the idea of, do you scale and you go everywhere and you have multiple partnerships, and then like you're just trying to like get as many conversations as you can, or you get your sales team connected to as many reps as you possibly can. Like, I feel like that can sometimes be a detriment, where again, it's like I'm connecting all of these people and I'm doing all of these things, and like, yes, it's good activity, but it's almost like you're an inch deep and a mile wide, and you may not be able to get the return that you're hoping for, right? Versus if you're starting and you're like, okay, this might feel like it's not scaling because I'm talking to like 10 reps right now, and I am trying to take that personal approach, and I do want to understand all these things. Like, to me, I feel like that's really a good genesis to actually starting a partnership and then being able to scale. Because again, without that connection and without that trust, you're not going to get anything. So it's like you could have a million conversations, but none of them actually come to fruition for anything. Versus if like I'm talking to you, Chris, and I'm like, okay, I understand your family, like I understand where you live, I understand these milestones that are happening in your life. That's going to lead you to be like, hey, Christie's really cool. Dave or Jen, like you should chat with Christie. She's helped me do X, Y, and Z things. And that is beautiful, because in that way you're actually getting to know more people, and that's where the scale comes from. But it's like a natural progression of scale, because they, as in like the rep or the leader, introduces you and your team to other people that can do the exact same thing. It's almost like they're kind of doing the work for you in a certain extent, because it's like a referral of a relationship. So
totally. I think the key here is like be authentic and be memorable, right? Like
Yeah.
not in an inauthentic, cheesy way, but like be memorable. We're all fighting for mind share. Like we
Yeah.
all have 24 hours in a day, the highest performers, the lowest performers, we all have 24 hours in a day. How can you be memorable and so that your partners will actually prioritize and move mountains for you? And Christie's given us the blueprint to do it. Okay, so let's continue to get even more tactical down the funnel because I think this is really where you shine. So now let's talk about one of your more powerful plays, the Rep-Centric Opportunity Mapping. So walk me through this opportunity mapping step by step. How does it actually work inside your partner program?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the biggest things and kind of what led to this, just to kind of give a little bit of context, is we kind of started with the idea of let's present to a team, and then you get on a plane and then you go home and then you're like, okay, let's wait for the leads to come, right? And
Sounds familiar.
that's not really how it works. You know what I mean? Like maybe we got a couple leads a few years ago, but like now it has to be very much like surgical, you know? And I think the biggest thing for us is at the end of our presentation, it was like, this is what a good fit looks like. And it was very, just contextual, like this is what it could be, right? But always the biggest gap was, okay, what does a good fit look like for you? As in like a rep that we're actually talking to. So like from the presentation into like next steps and one-on-ones was us being able to look through Crossbeam and us being able to look at Sixth Sense and really use these tools to our advantage and say, okay, here are 3 accounts that we know that this rep owns that are trending for specific topics that we can solve for. And then we'll say, hey, this account has been pinging on our website, or these are specific, types of products that they seem to be looking at for the last 30 days. Could be a good account that we could collaborate on together, whether it's a new logo deal or whether it's a potential client of theirs. And I think that tangible, like meat to the bone, as we say, is really important because otherwise, they might still be thinking like, what is a good fit? Right? And they're so busy. There's a million partners. I think being able to kind of take that next step and say like, these are potential accounts that could be good. It doesn't mean that it has to be those, but it gets the wheels turning at least. And they could be like, oh my gosh, that one account actually is really similar to this other one that I just had a conversation with, a week ago. So I think that has really helped us to kind of bring more substance to these conversations as opposed to just like, this is what we do, call me if you have someone that you think could be a good fit.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And that was one of my favorite parts about our prep. It was just about how we have more topics on like your thoughts on enablement, but like enablement is kind of like, I consider it like washing a car with water, right? Like if you just go to your car right now and spray with a bunch of water, it will look good for like an hour, maybe, right? But then it dries up and guess what? It looks like crap again. Right? So you need to like actually follow up on the washing with water with like scrubbing it down and being surgical. So that's why I've always kind of talked about partner enablement. You do this big lunch and learn, either in person or virtual, and it's like, oh great, look, like you're feeling so good about yourself, but then nothing actually follows. So your follow-up game is really strong. So now let's talk about some of the tools. Like you kind of tease like using, certain tools like Sixth Sense. So how are you actually like using the Crossbeam, Sixth Senses, CRM data, to actually power some of these workflows?
Yeah. So first and foremost, it always comes down to our ideal customer profile, right? We want to focus on that first, whether it's employee count and also the verticals that we do really well in, which also is another bullet point as to why this would be a good account to work on together. That's kind of the first layer of selection. Yep. And then after that, Sixth Sense is an amazing tool to kind of showcase what is the activity at the account level that they have been searching for, right? And so that could be they've come to our website a couple times within the last 90 days. It could be that they're looking at certain products that we sell, or maybe not our products, but like things that are similar in that vein. They're key search words. And that activity is time bound, right? And having that be a lever, it showcases, hey, pain might be a part of this. Also, there could be some urgency, right? Because they've been looking at these specific things for the last 90 days. Those two things are the biggest elements to starting a conversation, right? Because if you don't have either of those, there's really not a lot to talk about because maybe there isn't pain and maybe they don't have any urgency. So that's not something that is going to be important. So Sixth Sense is huge in making sure that we understand like kind of what's going on as at least like an initial conversation starter and the why,
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I think what people are picking up hopefully is it's like enablement. Most people approach it from like, okay, I'm just going to like enable my partner in a general sense and then hope that they have light bulb moments all about specific accounts. But Christie's approach is like, no, flip the switch, work backwards from the accounts, map the account, and then go find the partner. And you can enable them on the fly. Like, it's not rocket science. I hate to say it. I don't care how complex we all think our software products are. At the end of the day, we're all motivated to close deals. And so we can ramp up pretty quickly, right, on like what ClearCompany's product is and joint value prop is, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that's a really smart approach. Which brings us into the next segment, which I'm calling myths that probably should die, right? And so you said, like, look, enablement alone doesn't drive results, right? Which we've had a lot of guests actually make that polarizing opinion, which I support. So my first question before we get into the nitty gritty is like, why do you think so many teams are getting this wrong, where enablement is like not going nearly far enough to kind of get the real outcomes that they need?
I think what it comes down to is customization and what it means for that actual person. Like, I do think enablement is huge, right? Like, we're still needing to do the presentations, and whether that's a large presentation, then it comes down to smaller groups, and then it kind of comes down further into one-on-ones or those connections. Like, that's what we're ultimately trying to get to.
Yep.
I think that, the thought process of, there's always going to be great content. There's always going to be one-pagers. There's always going to be all of these things, and that's wonderful, and that is needed. But I think people look at presentations, or at least I do sometimes, where it's like, okay, but what does that mean to me? And what can you do for me? I think innately people are always trying to consume content and get something out of it. And I think that getting something out of it is really where both of the worlds come together, where you do the presentation, you do the enablement, but then making it customized, and even down to the content, being able to say like, okay, we have this content, but is there anything else that you feel like you need in order to move this deal forward, or be able to reach out to your clients in a more, customized manner? I think that's where the magic happens, is when you pair both of them together.
Yeah, I fully support that approach. Very similar to my philosophy. I've always thought of enablement in two buckets. There's the need, like the must-have awareness level enablement, where it's like, you've got to do it. It doesn't necessarily immediately translate into outcomes you need, but like, look, if you zoom out on a yearly basis, let's just say a partner org that you're working with, really important partner, they have 50 seller reps. I'll just make that up. Well, there's a lot of turnover in a given year, right? There are people joining, people leaving, changing roles. So like, you do need to maintain a bare minimum level of awareness. Otherwise, you can't crack into that kingdom. Like, they won't talk to you, they won't support you. So you do need general level of enablement. I think what you're laying down, and I'll get a reaction from you, is my second bucket of enablement, which is what I like to call on-time enablement, right? Where it's like working for the account. So it's like, okay, I'm generally enabling you, so you're like aware of us, and you respect and trust us that we're doing a lot of cool things. But that's kind of like the washing the car. But then as accounts, as these signals pop up, then I like swoop in, and I'm giving you extremely tailored custom handholding / enablement around that specific account to drive it towards some outcome, whether it's a success or it's a failure, doesn't matter. At least we got the conclusion. So does that kind of resonate, the two buckets? High level awareness to kind of keep stoking the fire so the fire doesn't burn out. But then eventually when you see a signal, it's like, well, I better go throw gas on that fire so we get a big spark. Does that two bucket model resonate?
I could not say it more perfectly myself. Yes, I think it's dual. I think the first one is making sure that you're top of mind, making sure that you are around, and that's virtual, that's in person, that's everything. But then being able to have more of like that white glove like personalization is really where you continue to put gas on the fire, like you said.
Love that. Okay, cool. Now let's switch into one of my personal favorite topics, which I know is something that you like to talk about as well, which is how you actually lead your team, right? Because strategy is only as important as how effective kind of the leadership backing it actually is. And so for you, I want to talk about, high standards without losing trust is what we're calling this segment. And one thing I really respect about you, Christie, is you really do strike this unique balance of, which is hard to pull off, which is your team clearly trusts you, right? But you also have high standards, right? So I'm a big fan, if anyone hasn't read the book, Kim Scott, famous author who published this book, Radical Candor. I would say it was probably like one of the top 3 books that has changed me. And to save a long story short, she has this famous 2x2 matrix where it's like, the goal is as a leader to have radical candor, which there's 2 axes. There's There's empathy, right? Which is an easier muscle to develop. It's like, do you actually care about your team, right? And clearly you do. And that's easy for most early managers and leaders to develop. But the other axis is being able to like challenge directly and maintain high standards and drive accountability. This one was so much harder for me personally to develop. And to be honest, I had some like really bad heartburn moments with some of the key people in my team because of it. So for you, it seems like you're just able to thread the needle here, which I know probably wasn't easy to develop. So my first question for you on this is like, were you kind of always like that, or did you have to like figure this out over time? And what was that evolution for you as a leader, both managing the empathy, which is probably more straightforward, with having a real strong backbone when the stakes are high?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. And honestly, something that I think we probably all continue to strive for, right? I don't think that any leader would be like, I have it completely down 100% of the time. Like it's very much a balance. And I would say, yeah, I think the empathy, like as a leader, like that's really important to understand, like, how is it going? What is happening? Like work is a part of our world, it's not our entire world. So understanding all of that is important. But I think I also go back to like, again, like the metrics, right? Like in a sales role, like the numbers don't lie. And then being able to say like, okay, what does the activity look like in order to kind of get to some of those metrics? And then being able to ask questions. Like a leader that I very much love and really much look forward to and look up to, he's amazing at asking questions. He's amazing at taking like that next level of like, okay, well, tell me more about that. Or like, can you give me an example? I think sometimes in the past, to be honest, I just wanted to fix it. I wanted to make it easy for them, right? And I think if you don't ask those questions and if you don't kind of prod a little bit more with kind of challenging a little bit, but in a very trusting and caring way, you sometimes don't actually allow them to grow because you're just trying to fix it for them. So admittedly, something that I feel like I'm continuously, getting on. I don't have it 100% down, but I think being able to ask additional questions and kind of dive deeper into, the activity and what that's looking like helps them to be able to think like, oh, I actually have the answer myself. I actually already knew it. I just need to like actually go and do it.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing some of those vulnerable anecdotes, Christie. And I totally resonate with that. And you talked about one of your key mentors and the power of asking questions. That I find is a cheat code for any leader. Like whenever you have these high leverage conversations, really intense conversations, which are not easy for the leader, asking questions can be a really powerful disarming mechanism in a positive way. And one of the best ones, I can't remember which book I picked it up from. It's like this book that has like 7 questions that can change your entire leadership approach. One of them was, like, say you have a teammate come in, they're really pissed off, maybe they don't like something that's just happened, or they're really struggling, and you just look at them and just be like, look, hey, Christy, like, what's this really about? Let's just take a step back, right? You're telling me this, but like something else is going on. Like, what is this really about? And that really, the person's like, well, oh, wow. Well, like, let me tell you what it's actually about. Like, and then they can perhaps lower their shoulders, open up. So I think that's great. Which brings me to the next question for you, Christy. And this is something every leader manager has to deal with. How do you handle a situation where someone on your team isn't performing up to their standards that they expect for themselves, and certainly not the standards that you expect for them? Like, you don't have to give anything specific here, but like, what's your personal approach to that? Because we've all faced it.
Yeah, I would say, again, just basically connecting with them and understanding, like, how are they doing? How do they think that they're doing? What does their current, progress look like to them? And asking questions around like, is this where you want to be? And then why, what are some like the top 3 elements of like maybe why we are where we are? And is there anything that you feel like maybe we could have done differently, And I even say it now, like right? I think like that can be kind of disarming as well. Instead of being like, hey, what could you have done differently? It's more around like, hey, are there elements that you feel like we could have done different, Maybe not as direct, and maybe that's, again, me, a little bit more on the empathetic side. But I think that way it shows that it's like we really are a team, and, being able to really synthesize and understand some of these pitfalls is an area where then you can see, like, are they interested in doing something different? Are they interested in actually going into the details of what's happening, why is it happening, and what can be done differently? That's what's going to shape, like, are they going to do something different or are they not?
Yeah, I think that's a really powerful, disarming approach. So I hope people listen to that. And it reminds me of one of the great models that one of my mentors taught me. And it's like a two-step approach to figure out which way the conversation is going to go. So let's just say you have a person on the team who's like really underperforming, and you've got to have a tough conversation. You basically need to like ask two questions to figure out which branch is this conversation going to go, because there's like 4 different paths. So the first question is like, you want to figure out what mental state is this person in, right? So are they coming in, they know they're like, they know their performance is low. So are they just like generally kind of at a bad place, or are they in a really vulnerable bad place? Because if they're in like a really, really tough spot, that's not the time to have a really intense conversation and hammer them, right? So you have to understand, are they coming in like just generally bummed, or are they like really, really in a dark place? Because that's going to change how I approach it. Yeah. And then the second branch point that I get to is, to your point, I ask them questions to help me understand what their perception of how they arrived at this situation is. And if they bring accountability, right, it's going to be a very positive, productive conversation. I'm definitely not going to hammer, right? But if you come in and you're seemingly okay and you don't bring accountability, then a different Chris shows up, if I may say, right? Where I have to be a little bit tough, especially for senior ICs on the team, where it's like, okay, you've been aware of the problem, but you're kind of lax about it, and you're kind of poo-pooing it. So that's when I bring a different tenor. So how would you, I'm just going to throw a curveball at you, Christie. Let's just say you bring this empathetic approach. You're using we language. It's like, look, but they're still clearly not getting, and this is a hypothetical, not singling anyone out for real, but they're just like not really getting it, and they're not really bringing that sense of urgency or accountability. How do you then bring that, not empathetic backbone or muscle, but the backbone of like driving accountability? How does that show up for Christie?
Yeah, I think it shows up in, after you kind of understand where they're at and, the we language, as you say. I think the next steps are like, okay, what is the strategy to get to where you want to be? What are you already doing right now today to plant the seeds? Or already, what do you have coming up with activity? What are you coming up with as far as potential pipeline? What does it look like? Have you already looked at the next few weeks, the next month? Like, what are you doing to make sure that you are setting yourself up for success, as opposed to just letting life hit you? What does that look like? And then if they don't have that prepared, then it's at least, okay, take the next few days. And I would love the next meeting to be a walkthrough of, how are you going to get back to where you need to be, and the tangible steps and the tangible bullet points of activity leading into what we actually need in lagging indicators.
I think that's a great approach. And then the final question on this one, just because I get asked it so often, I struggle with it when I was coming up the ranks. When you have, and maybe you've experienced this, when you just have like a hostile situation happening where someone on the team is just so upset about maybe company policy changes, or they don't approve of some of the things that are going on, and they come in pretty hostile. Maybe it's happening over Slack, or maybe it's live on a call. What is your personal leadership approach to like diffusing the situation, not getting combative, and saying, "Hey, look, we're clearly not in the right situational state to have a productive conversation about this topic. So let's do blank, and then we'll come back." So like, what's your personal approach to de-escalating a situation where both parties are not in a productive place to have that conversation? Because I think this is really important. This is an important moment as a leader, because things do get hot, and how you handle those situations will define to some extent how you're viewed as a leader.
Yeah, I would say I take the personal route. Like, if it gets heated in a group meeting, or even in a one-on-one, mostly like if it's in a group meeting, I just kind of reach out to them personally. I will like give them a call after the meeting and be like, "Hey, I just wanted to level set with you. Like, how are you doing? Like, what's going on your side? Like, I'd love to be able to like dive into it a little bit more. And can we talk about it like human to human, right?" And then being able to ask those questions and kind of get that down the funnel. If it's a one-on-one, I think that, allowing them to kind of get it out and be like, a lot of it sometimes can be emotions, right? Like if it's change, or if like something's going on, it's sometimes like a mix of maybe not feeling in control, and being able to let them kind of get that emotion out, and then be able to be like, okay, what are we going to do about this now, right? Like, what are the next steps in adding structure into like having us both feel like we're on the same page and moving forward? So kind of being able to give the moment for a little bit of like emotion, and then being able to say, all right, like tangibly speaking, what are next steps? So
amazing. That's fantastic. And look, we're in the stretch right now, so just 2 final questions, and then we'll wrap up, Christie. So the second last one is like, look, you're an ecosystem leader of the year last year. You obviously have a penchant for hiring like really top talent. A lot of the folks on your team were award winners in our boot camps. So the second last question for you is, when you're in the hiring cycle, let's just pick, like a standard like senior strategic partner manager role. Like, what are the unique traits that you're looking for that if you just don't see shining through, it's just like, sorry, they've got a lot of their cool stuff, but like I can't move forward with them. So like, help any of the folks listening understand like what are the most highest leverage skill sets or character traits that you really index on in order to feel good about moving forward with a candidate.
I would say first and foremost would be passion and personality, honestly. Like, I feel like you can teach somebody a lot of the metrics aspect or, the elements of partnerships, but like, how do you show up? Are they excited to learn? Are they coachable? That's another thing as well. Being able to be open and excited about this job is really important. I would also say having them, be able to understand what previous roles have brought them to where they are today, right? Can they be analytical enough to say, I brought this from this job, I have this element from this other job that I learned, and tangibly say, this is how I can bring value into this role, and this is why I would be the top candidate. I think that's really important too. Like, just being able to roll into an interview and, be charismatic, that's great. But like tangibly saying like, hey, this is the value that I'm going to bring you, because it also is the same as what they would do to a rep and a leader. They're trying to understand what I deem as an important candidate, and then being able to bring that and say like, this is how I've succeeded in the past and this is how I can succeed in this role, I think is really important as well.
Well, thanks so much for sharing that, Christie. I resonate with so much of what you said. I love the passion piece. And it's like, look, like not everyone is like super passionate about HR tech and all this other stuff. But that's okay. But can you be passionate about bringing a big impact? Like I always thought about it like the impact. Like I want these people to win. I want my customers to win, their employees to win, my company to win. So like, can you bring that passion, which usually brings curiosity with it? Yeah. So then just a quick follow-up on that. For anyone listening who's potentially in interviewing cycles or trying to break into interview cycles, like what would your top tip be for them of like in a crowded market where companies are getting so many job applications, like what would be your top tip to someone like applying to role, like just even getting into the interview stage and getting that rolling? What resonates with you? You get hit up all the time, I'm sure, like by people cold outbounding you. Like what actually resonates? What tips would you give for folks applying to jobs right now?
I would say try to be as customized as you possibly can. So obviously this probably goes without saying, don't just like apply and like leave it there. If it's a job that you really like, understand, are there any current connections that you have that you can lean on that actually work at that position as well? Can you reach out to the hiring manager and understand like what they're going through and maybe like, hey, this is something where I'm sure the team is being tasked to grow 30%, year over year. I know you are tasked with trying to find the best candidate. I've done these 3 things in a past role and think I could be a really good fit. And or being able to reach out to the leader of that team if you're able to find out who the actual leader is and be able to have a custom message for them. I think it all goes down to like research, being very diligent, and being able to send out very powerful messages of what are you going to do or could do if you were able to get the role. Because I feel like if I got a message from somebody saying like, hey, I'm sure you're tasked with X growth, I previously worked at another partner of the partner that I understand you guys all connect with and are growing with, this is what I can do if I were to join this team, I'd be like, wow, okay.
Giddy up. I love that. Well, look, anyone who is listening to this, keep an eye on ClearCompany to see if they're hiring on Christie's team, because she just gave you the blueprint, so no excuses. But look, we're at time, Christie. This was seriously such a fun conversation. I could go on for hours. So I just want to thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to everyone listening. You can tune in next week. Hit subscribe if you enjoyed today's conversation. But Christie, seriously, thank you so much.
Thank you, Chris, for the opportunity. I really appreciate it.
All right. Until next time. Thanks, everyone.